Yes, everyone. The College Football Show is back for a ninth edition. We appreciate you stopping by at the Voice of College Football. Leave those comments and questions in the chat. As always, Monday through Friday, we just started up late last week, so we know it's a new thing for all of you. But lock it in every Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. The news of the day, one big topic, great guests, and one call in, unless we push it into bonus time. And without further ado, we'll get to that guest today. We got Jed May stopping by. Jed, can his work be caught on Rivals, UGAsports.com. Jed, how's it going today?
Doing good, man. How are y'all?
Doing well. Appreciate you stopping by. And of course, most people are thinking basketball right now. We're headed toward March Madness. The Georgia basketball team, I have no idea. How are they doing?
Well, they got off to a pretty good start in the non-conference. They beat St. John's, who I think is in the top 10 right now. They beat Kentucky, I think their second game of conference play. They've hit the skids over the past, I don't know, month and a half or so. They can't finish in the second half. Like they've had leads or been right in games, and they just no-show on the second half. So they play Auburn Saturday. So, it's at Auburn. So, they took them down to the wire in Athens, but Auburn didn't have Janai Broome. So, they probably need to win 3 of their last 5, and 2 of those games are at Auburn, and they play Florida at home. So, they got a chance, but it's not looking as good as it was probably about a month ago.
Turning to football, of course, Jed, the recruiting situation kind of in a lull across the nation. Not a whole lot happening. Much is simmering. There are a lot of camps, the Under Armour camps and so forth going on over the last month to 6 weeks. Your thoughts about the Georgia 2026 class as it's rounding into form, and who are the big targets that are being talked about right now?
Yeah, they've only got, I think, 4 commits. 3 on the offensive side of the ball, or 2 on the offensive side of the ball and 2 on the defense. So a couple defensive backs committed, which you expect with Kirby Smart. But yeah, I think, the big one is Jared Curtis, a quarterback who was a former Georgia commit for about 6 months, maybe. And he decommitted because he wanted to take other visits and didn't want to do it while he was committed, which is fair. But I think Georgia is still trending in a positive direction there. And then I think a big question for me is, how do you follow up a really good receiver class in 2025, which they've already got a top 100 guy committed in Vance Spafford from California? And can you land some studs on the offensive line? Because the offensive line classes the past couple of years have been good. I don't think they maybe were at the level of the 2017, 2018 classes. So do you really hit one of those home run classes along the offensive line? There's a lot of targets out there. They're in with Jackson Cantwell, who is I believe, number 1 prospect for us on Rivals. And, some other 5-star top 100 type guys. But being in, it's great. Getting visits is great. You got to close on some of these guys. I think that's what's going to be interesting to see as spring visits shake out. Who do they really have a chance at? Who are we going to be looking at the end of April and say, these are the guys Georgia's actually got a shot to land?
And the thought is that ever since Kirby Smart got established there after about year 2, is that they've got a shot at anyone, that they pretty much have their selection process down and can get anyone. And of course, Georgia is probably the highest surging state in regards to talent on the upper end, where it used to be Texas, Florida, California third. Georgia's pretty much knocked California out of the way and become the third most prominent state. So it's, I'm sure, a strong recruiting class in state again, and you're not going to win all those battles, but anyone in particular to highlight, whether that in state or out of state, that is at the top of the wish list?
Yeah. Again, Cantwell is one. You look at, running back there after Derek Cooper out of, I think he's from Miami, who was committed for like 3 days last summer. And then it was a whole, his mom went on Twitter and said he's not committed. It was a whole thing. But I think Georgia is in a good spot with him as well. He'll be back in Athens probably this spring, and then he's got an official visit set up. So those guys, I think receiver is one that's kind of a question mark. A bunch of offers went out this spring. I think it's going to be interesting. Or an area on defense they really need to look at is outside linebacker, edge, whatever, because haven't really had those game record guys anyway. Like Jalen Walker was one. Michael Williams was kind of there, but never really like was a consistent game wrecker, I guess. And then they had a bunch of guys transfer out, so they really need to rebuild that room. And there's a couple guys in state. Kamari Brooks is one. Um, there's some guys out of state. I think of Rodney Dunham from North Carolina. They really like Xavion Griffin-Haynes is one. They've sent some new offers out. So I think that position on defense is who can they get that will fit in Georgia's defense, can do all the stuff they ask those guys to do, set the edge against the run, whatever. But you got to get some guys that get sacks or at least affect the passer at the end of the day. And I think that's an area of focus on defense in this class for sure.
Jed, as soon as you said game wrecker, I thought of the Super Bowl because
exactly.
I don't know if that was unprecedented in regards to, there are pictures all over social media and video of 3 Georgia linemen all lined up, and then obviously 4 starters on defense total. And I don't know if that's unprecedented, taking from one college football team to a Super Bowl championship offense or defense. But just to imagine, only 3 years ago, these guys were winning a national championship in college, and only 2 years ago, they were winning a national championship, another one in college, of course. And then you just take 2 years later and supplant them onto an NFL defense, and they're winning a Super Bowl championship only 2 years later. Is like guys in their mid-20s. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, and you look at those championship teams, those defenses, like the defensive lines Georgia's had the past couple of years have been good, but I don't think you've had those like just dominant, consistent. Like Jalen Carter in 2022 was like just unstoppable, unblockable. Jalen Walker flashed that. Michael Williams occasionally flashed that. He battled injuries a lot. I don't know that they really had that guy that's just, you need him to go make, like, you think of the clip in the Super Bowl where a few years ago where, what's his name? Sean McVay. He says Aaron Donald's going to go make a play. And Aaron Donald, pressures Joe Burrow and, sacks him or throws incomplete or whatever, and they win the Super Bowl. I don't think Georgia's got that guy in the past few years where you can say, hey, this guy's going to go get a sack on this play. And I think some of that is scheme. They don't necessarily prioritize pass rushing first. You see a guy like Trayvon Walker whose sack numbers didn't blow you away in college, and he's having success in the NFL. Michael Williams could do the same thing. So, Nolan Smith wasn't a guy who had a ton of sacks in college, but he tested off the charts at the combine and has had a great playoff run with the Eagles. So I think when you look at defensive linemen, I think they signed some of those guys in the 25 class. You look at Elijah Griffin, who was a 5-star as an example, but I think this class is more about the defensive linemen too, but the outside linebackers that like the Nolan Smiths, right? Like the Jalen Walkers who can really get after the quarterback in a variety of ways.
Jed, when you made the comment about Sean McVay making that statement to Aaron Donald, not necessarily was the Notre Dame player who came off the edge in that category by any stretch, but he was the guy in the moment, obviously, in the first half in what might have been the play that ended Georgia's season, even though the game wasn't anywhere close to being over. That obviously just turned the scales in Notre Dame's favor. So you were talking about offensive line play and it not being as tightened up in the last few years as it's been. Was that more recruiting? Like if we looked at the recruiting rankings, or is it more development?
I think it's some of both. I think, and I've only covered recruiting for a few years, so I think I'm not the best person to answer it, but like I feel like there haven't been as many guys who have come out of high school and been like, this guy is a day one starter. Like Andrew Thomas, when he came out of high school, he started day one at Georgia pretty much. Guy like Broderick Jones, you thought could be a day one starter. And I don't know, one, that there have been that many guys like that, but two, NIL can spread all these guys out. Instead of one team landing 2 or 3 5-stars, they're diluting the talent out, which is good, I think, overall for college football. But when you're a team like Georgia, then it's like, okay, we got to get some of these guys, and then you got to develop. And Monroe, there's the 22 and 23 classes didn't pan out that great because you had some guys leave. You had a guy, Kelton Smith, who medically retired, and Ernest Green has been a hit from 22, but he struggled this past year due to injuries. Monroe Freeling has been a guy from 2023 who has mostly played well, and then that Sugar Bowl was just an abomination when he had to play left tackle. So, and I think this year you look at it, spinning it to the team side a little bit, you lose Tate Ratledge, you lose Dylan Fairchild, you're going to be on your third different center in 3 years. You lose Xavier Truss, who has been there for a decade, it feels like. So it's the time for those classes to really step up. And there's some guys who've got talent, but don't necessarily have a lot of experience. So I think spring practice is going to be very interesting because I truly think all 5 spots probably are wide open.
This is the College Football Show, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by. We've got a Michigan Live show later tonight, typically on Thursday, but been moved to Friday this week. Jed Mays here to break down Georgia football for us at the cusp of spring practice. You can catch Jed's work right there, as you see on X/Twitter. That directs you right to Rivals, UGAsports.com. When we look at the 2025 class, I know I'm taking us around the recruiting rounds here. Who would you expect could make a splash early?
I think Elijah Griffin, who I mentioned earlier, could be one because he's just such an impressive physical kid. And I think, I talked to him a few times about the recruiting process, and mentally, I think he has what it takes to handle a transition to college. And like I said, you need studs up front. And I think he is one. And I think offensively, you look at, they signed 2 top 40, 50 receivers in CJ Wiley and Talon Taylor, who I think are both really good. CJ Wiley is a big body, probably 6'4", 210 pounds, which they haven't really had a lot of, or didn't really have a lot of in the receiver room last year. And then Talon Taylor's just really good at everything. Like, he's not a sub 4.4 guy. He's not 6'5". He's just so well polished and a great route runner that I think it's going to be hard to keep him off the field. So I think those 2 guys on offense. Defensively, you look at Griffin, maybe Isaiah Gibson, because he's one of those edge defensive end outside linebacker types that I think could work his way into a role depending on how things go, how he adjusts to college. But yeah, I mean, that's the one thing about recruiting, Will, is it's hard to play as a freshman when you've got so many talented guys in front of you. But also with the transfer portal and depth pieces transferring out, that also opens up the door for some of those guys. So spring practice is huge, and I want to say all but a handful of the freshmen early enrolled, which is huge, obviously, for the chances of playing this fall.
Jed, how does the situation with Carson Beck go south so quickly? And maybe I'm making too much of it. Maybe he just made some kind of business decision, but we're talking about a guy who came within an eyelash of taking a team into the playoff that would have been, of course, the prohibitive favorite. He comes into the season as ranked the number 1. Check out any site preseason 2024. It's Carson Beck's the best quarterback in college football, number 1 team, all of that. His statistics show that he didn't have nearly the season this past year, although there were other factors. They led the league or led the nation in drop passes and so forth. But I got to say, that was the transfer portal entry that blindsided me. I didn't know that there was any kind of issue or that he was looking to move on. And all of a sudden, of course, he gets injured right at the end of the first half of the SEC championship game. But, how do you read that entire situation and the way that played out?
Yeah, I mean, all year, it just something felt off. Like, just the offense never really clicked for any extended period of time. Like, okay, the second half against Clemson was great. All right, dynamite. And then, the Kentucky game wasn't good. And then the Alabama game, they put a bunch of points in the second half, but they had to throw the ball every play, and you had 4 down. So it's hard to take anything from that. It just never really felt in sync. And with Carson specifically, you saw some plays where he made really bad decisions. I don't know if that's pressing or trusting his arm talent. Like, I think of the Florida game where he had a couple, I think, back-to-back drives in the first half where he's just throwing it, and you're like, what is he doing? That's a guy who's started for a season and a half at that point. He's taken a ton of practice reps. You can't do that at that level of experience. So, and then he gets hurt, and then he kind of just goes off the radar for a while, and then he's not with the team when they go to the Sugar Bowl, and he eventually shows up, but it's like, you'd think he'd be there helping Gunnar Stockton get ready, and it's not like he was, right by his side. So it was a weird thing, and I think by the end of the year, it was pretty clear that he was going to be gone. Obviously, everybody thought it was going to be the NFL, and then The transfer portal thing, I just think it was one of those things where it was time for both sides maybe to move on. And he ended up in Miami. Everybody knows his girlfriend's at Miami, and Miami's got all the NIL money and whatever. But I don't think the end of the year necessarily was. I don't want to say they didn't end on good terms, but it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. I think at the end of the year, for one reason or another, and then I think it was pretty clear that both sides could benefit from a fresh start.
And certainly, considering the circumstances Gunnar Stockton was thrown into, I don't think anyone thinks that he did a horrible job by any stretch. He made a bad pick very early from the time he jumped into the game against Texas, but obviously they recovered. They won the game. And did he play well against Notre Dame? I wouldn't say he played great. I wouldn't say he played awful. It wasn't his issue. He was, far down the list of issues for Georgia against Notre Dame. But he's obviously not a slam dunk. We know this guy's going to be a superstar. You wouldn't think, okay, this is the situation in Georgia. So is there a quarterback battle? And are you surprised that they haven't done more in acquiring anyone?
Yeah, I think there's very much a battle. I think Ryan Puglisi is a redshirt freshman who has all the talent in the world. He got here last January and missed spring practice last year because he had a knee, I think a stress fracture in his knee. But obviously you're soaking up the playbook and all that kind of stuff. And everything we heard from practice last year, like this kid is the truth, arm talent. He played baseball in high school, so he's got mobility. So yeah, I think there's absolutely a world where he's the starter game one this fall. I think it's going to be an open competition, but when you look at Kirby Smart's track record, I think he also favors the guy who is the oldest. And Gunnar Stockton's been in Georgia in the program at Georgia for 3 years plus now. And him and Mike Bobo have a long relationship. He committed to Bobo when he was at South Carolina. So they go way back. So I don't know. I still think Gunnar Stockton's the favorite right now. But yeah, I think Ryan Puglisi has a chance. It's going to come down to spring practice. I think it's going to be wide open for sure. I don't think, 2 years ago you saw it was Beck and Vandegrift and a freshman Stockton. And I was like, okay, it's a competition, but this is going to be Carson Beck unless he really screws this up. I think it's going to be much more of an open competition, maybe than it was even 2 years ago.
All right, Jed May stopping by. Track Jed's work right there on his X handle, Jed May, but also UGAsports.com is the place to find him. Rivals coverage of Georgia athletics. Jed, we always appreciate you stopping by. Good to see you, and you have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Absolutely, man. Anytime.
All right, great stuff out of Jed as we check in on Georgia football right here at the Voice of College Football. Keep in mind that we come your way on the recruiting channel every Tuesday with Leanne Herring. On the Move is the show. I'm going to take some pride in naming that one because I am not the one to name shows. If you notice, Ohio State Buckeyes live, Michigan Wolverines live, Florida State Seminoles live, that was after hours and hours of brainstorming, believe me. Wink, wink. But hey, it just kind of felt right. Transfer portal, recruiting, guys are on the move. There we go. On the Move. That's the name of the show. On the Move, recruiting and portal update every Tuesday. That's on the recruiting channel right here at the Voice of College Football. So please join us there, 1 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesdays. And I'm here to talk college football with all of you every Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern time. We're hoping this catches on. A number of reasons why we chose this time slot, but basically we are going to go through the news of the day. One big topic, which we started with TV ratings this week, and they kind of broke down on us because we had the big SEC Big Ten announcement on Monday. We went into the Big 12 TV ratings on Tuesday in the ACC, and we'll get to the rest, the SEC and the Big 10. Don't believe we've got time today to tackle the SEC. I was just working on transfer portal breakdowns, starting with the Big 10. So be looking out for that. Big 10 transfer portal quarterback breakdowns. It's not real impressive. I'll say that. We posted Big Ten quarterback rankings here on the Voice of College Football on X today. Not me. Don't blame me for them. We did here at the network. Of course, you got the Voice of College Football brand. You got the Voice of College Football person. And Drew Allar's number one. That's about all I can say. The rest of them flip a 12-sided coin. Who's the second best quarterback in the Big Ten? I don't know. I got to think that whoever's going to win the job for Ohio State, Julian Sayin, is going to be one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the Big Ten. That's pretty much a given. If he just throws the ball in the air in a direction of a scarlet and gray jersey, they should be in good shape. All right. Jim stopping by, as well as Jackson, David, Johnny, zero talent. Johnny, don't say that about yourself, and others. So thank you for stopping by. I wanted to hit this particular story that came down today. We all love the big non-conference games, but we're not going to get Nebraska and Tennessee. Let me make sure you can all see this. You can, but you can't see me. Not that that's necessary. Okay, we've got Tennessee, Nix's Tennessee series citing stadium renovations. Okay, can't wait to hear this one. The Nebraska-Tennessee home and home football series scheduled for 2026 and 27 will not be played after Nebraska opted out of the agreement. Tennessee AD Danny White, not my favorite Danny White, not Danny White, but Danny White, Tennessee AD, posted on X that Nebraska called off the series and added that Tennessee is, quote, very disappointed by the cancellation. I saw the post by Pete Thamel, which said Nebraska and Tennessee have canceled their series, and Danny White responded and basically said, Nebraska canceled the series, but says we're very disappointed by the cancellation, especially so close to the initial game in 26. Yeah, the teams had been set to play in 26 at Nebraska and 27 the following year at Tennessee. In a statement, Nebraska Athletic Director Troy Dannon explained that renovations to the team stadium, which will temporarily lower seating capacity, ultimately led to the decision. We are making plans to embark on major renovations of Memorial Stadium that may impact our seating capacity for the 2027 season. The best scenario for us is to have 8 home games in 2027. So to slot in a crappy team to play at home in 2027 to offset any potential revenue loss from a reduced capacity. The additional home games will also have a tremendous economic benefit on the Lincoln community. The Cornhuskers announced they will host Bowling Green in 26 and Miami of Ohio in 27 on the dates when it was originally set to play Tennessee. Slightly downgraded competition there for the Huskers. Nebraska has never faced either school, and we were all marking that off of our lists of games we needed to see, matchups we've never seen. Nebraska Bowling Green and Nebraska Miami was certainly up there with Michigan and LSU in terms of schools that have never played. Wow, they did us a favor there, certainly by making sure that they lined up against the powers of the MAC. The team will play 8 home games in 2027 for the first time since 2013. The cancellation ends a nearly 2-decade process around a Nebraska-Tennessee series. 2 decades, which was originally agreed upon in 2006 and set for the 16 and 17 seasons. In 2013, the 2 schools agreed to delay the games for a decade. I have no idea why that happened at the time. Nebraska will pay $1 million to get out of the scheduling agreement. White told Volquest that the buyout implications need to be much steeper with an old contract, and the cancellation puts Tennessee in a bind. Tennessee, which opens the 2025 season against Syracuse in Atlanta, had its non-league schedule set through the 2030 season. The school must either find an opponent who can fill the 26 and 27 dates for a home-and-home series or explore neutral site options. Well, I don't know who else doesn't have games scheduled for as recent as 2026. Quote, you really can't pull an audible this late in the game, White told Volquest. Nebraska's stadium renovation, the first phase of which had been set to begin after the 24 season, has been delayed until the 25 season at the earliest. And Tennessee won a bowl game against Nebraska in the 16 Music City Bowl. Nebraska, of course, won a national championship in 1997, capped that season by beating Tennessee. Tennessee has been on the other side of a similar situation. The Vols in 2021 canceled a game against Army for the next season in 2022 and added Akron instead. Don't remember what that was all about at the time, but yes, Gregory, the MAC schools, they are ready to play anyone. Do you see these MAC non-conference schedules? They're ridiculous. They are ridiculous, these MAC non-conference schedules. I feel for these players, man. They're lining up against SEC and Big Ten powers every week. They play brutal non-conference schedules. So Nebraska and Tennessee will not play. And it has something to do with, of course, stadium renovations and trying to make money. It's always about money. Always about money. And I would say that although this apparently is about money, that going forward, if the SEC and the Big Ten get their way, I don't know what the incentive to play difficult non-conference games is going to be. I don't know what that incentive is going to be. There's not going to be one. It's all going to be about how did you finish in your conference. And even though the 4 slots that are most likely going to be preserved for the Big Ten and 4 for the SEC is not based completely on their standing in the conference, I got to figure if you finish 3rd or 4th in the SEC or the Big Ten going forward, if they get their way, you don't need to play anybody outside the conference. Who didn't play anybody outside the conference in 2024? Ohio State. They won the national championship. They didn't schedule anyone outside the conference. Now, to their defense, they had Washington scheduled. We know what happened. Washington joined the Big Ten. Therefore, that changed the dynamic. But the bottom line is Ohio State played no one outside the conference. Are they the only one that made the playoff that did not play anyone outside the conference? I believe so. So we have a national champion. We have a national champion 2 years in a row. Michigan, the year before, didn't play anybody outside the conference. We are, no incentive. And really, the schools should not have an incentive to play or not to play anyone. They should just be given a schedule. Just schedule the games. College football commissioner, we don't have one, but schedule the games. The team shouldn't schedule the games. I don't think the Buffalo Bills schedule their own games. I don't think the Cincinnati Bengals are scheduling their own games. Schedule the games. In my college football world, with me as commissioner, Nebraska called the office and said, we got to cancel these games with Tennessee next season and the season after. Tough luck. No, you're not canceling any games. You're contracted to play the games. It's on the schedule. Although we wouldn't even have a schedule that went out that far. The game should be scheduled during the off season. We should have no idea who's going to play outside conference games in 2026 and beyond. We should have no idea at this point. They shouldn't be scheduled. Why are we scheduling years in advance? It's not necessary. It is not necessary. It is not necessary. Keep it locked in here at the Voice of College Football, because we've done it in the past and we will do it for this situation. We will come up with what we determine to be hopefully the best way to schedule, which we've determined that in the past, but also the best way to structure this college football playoff. So give me some time to think about it. They blow it up every time I lock in on something and deliver a live stream or a video to say this is how the college football playoff should be administered. But check out the videos. They're all there and they all make sense and they all work. They have their flaws. They all do. There's no way to create the perfect system, but we've created the best scheduling system, certainly, and we'll just revisit that in future weeks and months. All right. Again, we've looked at the quarterback transfer additions in the Big Ten, and we're going to release that video as soon as possible. I was hoping to get it done by showtime, but I did not. And then we've got some plans afterwards. And so I don't know when I'm going to release that, either later tonight or possibly first thing on Saturday morning. We're going to run through all the conferences and the transfer portal additions. And then at the end of spring practice, we will give you your quarterback rankings in each conference. Absolutely. Keep in mind that the State of the Voice of College Football is coming up on Monday. So we enjoy doing this. And we're going to camp out with you for who knows how long on Monday, because the network keeps growing and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It used to just be me, and then it was me and a few other people. And now it's me. And I think we counted, did we count 40 people? 40 of us contributing in some way. And I basically just take out the trash at this point. So we will talk about all the additions, all the network initiatives, all the priorities, the promotions, the this and the that, and the social media and everything that we've got going on. But keep in mind that everything we deliver here is on audio. And at some point here, we won't do it right now, but we will deliver those links so you can follow us on Apple, Spotify, all the major audio platforms, Google, Amazon, whomever else is out there. We are available, as are all the team channel live streams. Those are on audio as well. But you can catch everything that you missed. If you just want to listen, you don't want to look at me, then you can just listen to the audio. And I should think of that and get myself a arm that's going to sit right on my lip like a big time radio DJ. That's the way that's supposed to work, right? Like that. But then again, I bought this as a makeshift mic that was supposed to be used for a few weeks, and now I've been using it for like 3 years. So we have much better mics around that are laying on the floor and so forth in the closet than this one right here. All right, folks. Yeah, we talked some Georgia football if you're just getting here. So check that out. And let's see if there's any other headlines. That was the one that caught my eye, the Nebraska-Tennessee cancellation. We talked about Texas and USC yesterday being the latest programs to cancel their spring games, which I think is a travesty that now we do not have spring games for a number of teams because they don't want to put players on tape or players in front of an audience to be poached. That's the reason given. That is the reason given. And we'll have coaches' rankings, of course, coming up here very soon. when I get my act together and get my lineup of activities. But man, uh, I have ceased to become a host here, and we're just running the business every day. So we'll get to those sorts of things. I will take one call because again, I don't believe we've got time to run through those SEC TV ratings that we would like to. So if you'd like to call the show, bring up anything concerning college football. And again, the state of the voice of college football is coming up Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And also, we had more rave reviews on social media today concerning our book. It was nice to see some folks out there that I was unaware had purchased the book, Disputed National Champions. The link's in the description section of this video and every video here at the Voice of College Football for a mere $9.99. This baby could be yours if you love college football. If you love college football, if you're a junkie, you're a nerd, this is a gold mine right here. This is a value. Let's see. Who would have made the 14-team playoff before we take Chris's call? Who would have made what year are we on here? 1993. Listen to this 14-team playoff in 1993. Nebraska number 1, Penn State 2, Miami 3, Florida 4, Florida State 5, Oregon 6, Texas A&M 7, Colorado 8, Alabama 9, Auburn, Colorado State, et cetera, et cetera. I think I read off the year incorrectly because yes, that was 1994. I was going to say West Virginia should have been in there. They were undefeated. My bad. That was 1994. I was reading off. So in 1994, our 14-team playoff would have been Nebraska number 1, Penn State 2, Miami 3, Florida 4, Florida State 5, number 6, Oregon, number 7, Texas A&M on probation, number 8, Colorado, 9, Alabama, 10, Auburn on probation, 11, Colorado State, number 11 in the country in our 14-team playoff in 1994. They beat Colorado State. No, they lost to Michigan, right? Lost to Michigan in the Holiday Bowl. Holiday Bowl? That doesn't sound right. Holiday Bowl. Kansas State, number 12. Ohio State at 13. And Utah at 14. Ohio State, Utah, Mississippi State, Arizona, Virginia, Virginia Tech, and North Carolina all had similar records for the last couple spots. Fascinating. It's on Amazon. Disputed National Champions. Chris, how you doing?
Good.
What's going on today?
That was the year after I went to school at Colorado State.
At Colorado State? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sonny Lubick, correct?
Yeah.
Was the head coach.
And that was his first year when I went there. 93, I think it was after that assistant coach. Maybe you can help me think of his name. He actually did okay there. He'd went from Ohio State and
Earl Bruce.
And I think they played Oregon in a holiday and won. And I don't know how good they were, honestly, with either coach, but it's kind of interesting to see, though, that they were, I guess, cresting at a time when not long after Earl Bruce was there, and I guess not long after Sonny Lubick took over. I don't know what brought Sonny Lubick there. I'm not close enough to the situation to even guess. But like I said, the year I was only there one semester. I don't know if you know my academic history, but it's not very impressive. But anyway, yeah, they were. I think with Sonny Lubick, and then he was there quite a while. And I think 94 might have been one of his better seasons, if I remember correctly. They played Michigan
10-2.
Yeah, they played Michigan. I think Michigan beat them pretty good. I don't think it was a very good game, but to be in the game, I guess, says something about how good they might have been. I don't know.
I think it was like 24-17 or 27-20. I thought they gave them a pretty good game.
I don't think so. I think it was more no. Look in the history. I think they got beat pretty good in the Holiday Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
All right. We'll see.
Yeah, it wasn't a 7-point. It was more like, it wasn't that close. But, it might have been close initially, but I think Michigan, I don't know if they were out to prove something, but they rolled over CSU pretty good. I think it was kind of a lopsided win. If I'm not mistaken, I'm usually wrong. So
1994 Holiday Bowl, Michigan 24, Colorado State 14.
no, maybe it was better than I thought. I didn't actually catch the game, so I might be falsely. I think Colorado State was hoping to kind of make a point, and they got beat, by a Michigan team that I don't know was that outstanding. Really, I mean, not to put down Michigan, but that was the other part of it too. It wasn't just that Michigan won. I think the Colorado State, I think, had a better record than Michigan did. I know there's differences in like scheduling and all that, but that was something I was trying to explain to you before. But anyway, yeah, I think the better team clearly was Michigan. I mean, you can look at the score and kind of tell, but I don't know how important the Holiday Bowl is. I mean,
So what's on your mind today, Chris?
Well, I missed your show, Mark. I'm sorry. I don't know really what you. I guess it was about the ratings, I guess, that go together with the Big Ten and SEC. Is that right? Or I mean, I guess I wasn't there to hear it. So
We have not made our way to the SEC and the Big Ten yet.
I guess that's what I was unsure about. But I don't want to like take your time, Mark. This is your show, and I'd rather hear from you than me. But are the ratings though? Just so I kind of, and it's forgive me for not knowing this already because you've already probably kind of covered it. But is there a big drop off? I guess between is that partly why? Because I know the playoff. I understand a little bit about what they're doing. I think I don't know if more teams necessarily means more people interested. I mean, that part I guess I'm not sure about, but I can kind of see why if you include a greater percentage, I guess, of the teams that are potential, I can understand how that might draw in more people. And do we have any information, I guess, about? I know those games weren't very close, but was the interest level, for the first year of the playoffs? Can you help me understand if there was a high interest level in them for the initial phase? Because I think that's kind of important.
Well, I believe there was a high interest level. The two of the four first round games, unfortunately, ran head into the NFL.
Oh,
So the TV ratings were not what they could have been.
well, did they, the people that make the decision, did they try to? I know, for example, they had Indiana and Notre Dame. Was that to draw? I mean, that's kind of a regional pairing, but was the idea maybe to bring in that part of the country in terms of is that what they did? I mean, I know sometimes they do that, sometimes to make kind of like the game more accessible or bring in a larger maybe regional audience. They kind of put regional teams together. Was that considered? Do you know anything about that?
No, the committee simply ranked the teams,
Well, no, but the pairings, Mark. I mean,
and the pairings are determined by the rankings.
well, I don't know. At any rate, what I noticed, just so you understand what I'm trying to tell you, I had Indiana. Not that my ratings matter; they don't. In all fairness, I don't think they even consider them. But I had Indiana rated pretty high. Higher I think than the most people probably do. And I considered the Indiana Notre Dame pairing to be almost like when they had the 14 playoff. I'm not so sure that wouldn't have been one of the four teams that I mean, obviously that's considering not considering teams that might have a better shot at winning. But I think in terms of potential, you know, I thought maybe Indiana. I thought Indiana might have had a chance to win. In all fairness, I didn't know if they would, obviously, and they didn't. But I considered that to be a top pairing quarterfinal. And I know Notre Dame won it pretty easily. But do you know if that brought in a lot of people in the terms of the viewership?
Well, what the networks decided to do the first weekend is put Notre Dame and Indiana on a Friday night to highlight Notre Dame, and then put Ohio State in prime time against Tennessee on Saturday night, and let the other two games, Clemson, Texas, and SMU and Penn State, go head to head with the NFL, which is obviously a difficult task, and it showed in the ratings.
Okay. They weren't. I mean, I wouldn't know honestly because I kind of wonder. I know that they consider a lot of things. I think before they make the decision, my guess would be that they try to include a team that might bring in a larger audience. I suppose. Do you know if those games made, did they break even? Did they lose money? Did you have any information on that? I mean, were they? It's kind of important, I think, to know whether they were, you know, do you have
Well,
any
I don't
information
think you
about
can
whether they brought
determine
in?
whether any singular games in the playoffs lose money. It's more of an entire television package. So you can't
Mhm.
basically say, okay, you can do the averages and average out all the games and say this amount of money needs to be made per game for us to break even or make money, but you don't really view it like that. You view it as this is what the investment is in the college football playoff. This is what we gain from advertisers. And it's kind of an entire product, not just one game.
Well, I mean, I guess the question I might have, it's like, I know, for example, they admitted, not that they shouldn't, fairness. I'm not trying to like, I don't like it when people like kind of throw shade on somebody for something that may not be their fault. I know Penn State was kind of an afterthought in some ways, but they came up and they stood strong. I think they showed that whether that was intentional, I don't know, but I think they proved almost to the championship game. Actually, I think they lost the game to Notre Dame, but that game almost turned on a dime. If I remember correctly, I think there was an interception late in the game that kind of cemented it for Notre Dame. But barring that interception, I'm not so sure Penn State might not have advanced to maybe play for a national championship against Ohio State. Um, so it looks like they might be. I know the real MVP kind of commented on it. By restricting, I think this idea might be that it's like a restriction, but it's also elevating it. I think a little bit if they admit these conference teams, if they have a higher level of productivity, I guess at the championship level, that might make these games better. Is kind of what I think they might be doing. I don't know if you have that information, but in like having two teams from the Big Ten I'm sorry, Big 12 and Atlantic Coast kind of accomplishes the same thing. And I know they talked about three? Was it three at large for 16? But only like I guess one. Was it one? Because it wasn't up for Notre Dame, right? So one at large, I guess. Is that restricted to a G5, or have they made that determination? Do you know?
It would be
The
one
one,
at large if it was a 14 team and three if it's a
yeah.
16. Yeah.
Well, no, but I thought the format was going to be 14, so it'd probably just be one. Is that restricted to G5? Do you know? The one at large, the one at large that they have, that's kind of almost like the play-in, I guess. It's not a
Yeah.
play-in.
So if you add it up, four for the Big Ten, four for the SEC's, eight, and then two each for the ACC and the Big
Yeah,
12 makes
12.
12. So then you
And
got
then
two open spots. So you basically have a group of five guaranteed, and then the other
you have
one
Notre
goes
Dame
to,
too, though. So
well, Notre Dame, or it's an at-large spot, is what it
well, I know,
is.
but I guess unless Notre Dame just falls off the map, which I don't expect. It's almost like kind of reserving. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I
They
mean,
would have to finish in the top 14 in the country.
yeah, but I mean, with their scheduling, I mean, I don't know. I mean, anyway, I don't really want to get into that, but so it's almost like a reserve spot for Notre Dame, and then one, I guess, which makes sense, and I think, um, I don't know. Like I said, I thought Army, even though they lost to Notre Dame and got, pretty much run out of town or whatever, it was a lopsided. I kind of thought Army should have been in the playoff, but I understand why they didn't include them because of that reason, because they lost to Navy too, obviously, and then that might have been why. Although I don't think that really entered into it because I think they'd already didn't they kind of make that decision before that game anyway. I don't know
Yes.
the Army, which I
Who
don't know
would
how fair
you
that is.
who would you have taken out of the playoff to include Army?
Well, I don't really look at things that way, but if you're just asking me directly, I mean, it would have had to have been Tennessee because I had Tennessee rated number 12. So that's who they would have replaced, I guess. Um, all I do, Mark, is I crunch the numbers. It's not really my decision, but yeah, if it would have had to be a team to go and a team not to, that would have been the team, I guess, that maybe, and of course, in hindsight, it's like, say, oh, well, Chris, he's probably, because they got beat so bad, 42-17 or whatever. That's really not what goes into my thinking. I don't really think of things that way. But anyway, yeah, it would have been Army, I guess, had I had the opportunity to. And I think Tennessee probably would have qualified anyway. So I'm not really taking Tennessee out. But I think maybe what I was trying to do though was get maybe more teams included. Like I don't know if 12 is a good number. I mean, it works, but I kind of think the 14 actually might have a better feel to it, maybe if they go about it the right way. And I'm not big on 16. I think at some point we got to kind of make a decision about what's fair and what's not. But if I had to throw my own opinion towards it, I guess, not that my vote matters, but I would probably vote for the 14 over the 16 and probably over the 12 too, even though I don't really prefer playoffs, but if they're going to go with a playoff, I think 14 might be the best. That's without
Yeah.
knowing.
So the first thing that comes to mind to differentiate between 14 and 16 for me would be if you're going to have 14 teams, then you have buys, which I don't like, I don't want. But if you're going to have buys, then I need to have something that clearly distinguishes those two teams that get the buys. They have to achieve something, they have to earn something that is clearly objective. I don't know if we can
There's only 2
accomplish
buys.
that. And then if we go to
There'd
16,
be
what
4
I don't
buys.
like about that is how do we reward conference championships? So I would almost think as though the conference championship games need to be abolished because it becomes a penalty for the teams playing in the conference championship game.
With 4 teams, you think maybe they could figure those 4 teams out in a way that if it really is about the championship, then how about just bracketing them in a way that the 4 instead of there's just a thought, Mark. I don't know that it's a good idea, but if we're talking 4, then that's like a quadrant. So really, what you would be doing at that point, at least from my angle, which maybe is way off base, but you could and then maybe that would open it to 16. Then maybe that's what we would need to do is include 16 at that point. But so 4, that's like a kind of a quadrant, sort of kind of like in the NFL where you have the 4 teams. Anyway, they could potentially advance, and then the championship game would probably be somewhere in the playoff bracket, like at the I don't know what level, but what do you think of that? Especially if we're having 4, makes sense.
Yeah, I would have to say I need graphics to be able to digest all of that,
Well,
to be able to
you can kind
see
of
it
think about it.
in front of me.
With 16 teams in the SEC, it would be just take they would be the 4.
You're talking
I
about
don't know that you'd have to.
playing the conference schedule in pods, 4 teams of
Yeah.
4. Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
that was talked about.
Okay, well, I didn't know. I'm not up on it like some people are. I don't get all the information that I need to make that. But anyway, yeah, it would be like you're introducing them at the I guess that'd be what the not at the title game level, but right the semifinal level, I guess between. So the 4 teams would advance, and then you'd have maybe the SEC championship game like at the Elite 8 level, maybe I don't know. I mean, to where the championship team itself would be included directly within the playoffs.
Well, it sounds like you're coming along to the playoffs. You're coming around to the whole process. You're
Well, no,
starting to thing up
I'll
your
explain
own.
why if you let me explain it. But it's because there's actually more teams I think that are. It didn't happen overnight, but it kind of was demonstrated. I think when Oregon played, was it Idaho? There's more teams now, Mark. I think that are capable of winning a title than there used to be. I mean, there's just I don't know what you call it. It's like I know those teams aren't at the FBS level, but I think potentially they could be. And so I think ultimately what the result would be is we're having, I think, enough teams participate to where you almost have to include some kind of playoff to get down to 2 teams. But no, I don't really prefer the playoffs if that's what you're asking me. It's never been my preferred. I don't prefer it, but if it works better, then I guess I have to adjust to what's better.
It does work better. I think we just had a successful playoff. I think it worked
I understand.
rather well,
Yeah. No,
despite
it worked fine.
some angst by certain people. I want to see it play out a few more times before changes are made, although it seems as though changes are going to be made immediately.
Oh, okay.
I
Well,
don't
at any
agree with
rate,
that.
I don't mind it if it's what they should do what works. Like I said, I think the 4 is a good idea. I think the 4 teams from the Big Ten, SEC, I think that's a good idea. And then the 2 from the SEC, or I'm sorry, 2 from the ACC and Big 12 is a good idea. I guess 1 for Notre Dame, I don't mind that. And then of course the 1 for the at large, whoever that is, I think that's
Group
a good
of 5.
Well, if it is,
It
but at
is
any
the
rate,
group of 5.
well, I don't
The
know who
group
it
of
is, but at any rate, the
It
one
is
at
the
large.
group of 5. The group of 5 already has a guaranteed spot. They will have a guaranteed spot.
I don't know that it's guaranteed because they have to finish, I think, high enough in the. Don't they have to kind of finish kind of like even
No,
though, well, don't they? I think it's not guaranteed. I don't think, Mark. But anyway,
it's
the win at
guaranteed.
large, I think, is a, well, I don't know. But anyway, that's a good idea too. And that's all I have to tell you. So I'll let you go.
Well, thanks for being here, Chris.
Have a good day, Mark.
Good to have you. You too.
Thanks for taking my call.
Of course. Good to hear from Chris, as always. Good to hear from all of you. And again, this was going to be our big TV ratings week, but things kind of fell apart on us in regards to breaking news earlier in the week and so forth and so on. So the TV ratings, we will hold on those. Going to deliver transfer quarterback ratings, or at least breakdowns of all the teams in the conferences. We'll do that. Breakdowns on what's going on within each conference in regards to quarterback additions through the transfer portal, and all sorts of ratings and rankings coming up here very soon at the Voice of College Football. If you want to hear some Georgia football talk, we did that at the top of the show with Jed May from Rivals. Check that out. And yes, the State of the Voice of College Football is coming up Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. That is most likely the next time you're going to see me. We appreciate everyone out there. You guys have a great weekend. I plan on doing the same. And we will see you on Monday at 6 Eastern.